All right, let's dive into something that sounds a lot more complicated than it probably is. Epistemic network analysis. You sent over a ton of research on this. I gotta say, it's already kind of got my head spinning a little bit.
Yeah, it can seem a little intimidating at first, I guess, but the idea is actually pretty straightforward. Think of it like we're mapping connections between ideas, like a giant web of knowledge.
Okay, so I'm picturing like one of those conspiracy theory boards with the red string connecting all the photos and stuff, but instead of aliens and government cover-ups, it's actual research.
Exactly. But instead of just, visualizing it, ENA actually lets us analyze those connections. It's like we're looking at the DNA of how people think and learn together.
So it's not just like what we know, but how all those different pieces of knowledge actually fit together. That's kind of blowing my mind a little bit.
Yeah, and those connections can tell us a lot. For example, there was a study where they used ENA to look at classroom discussions, and they found that students who made connections between different subjects, like linking history concepts to current events, they actually did better on tests.
Oh, wow. So it's not just about knowing more facts, but making those connections across different areas. That's actually really cool. That makes total sense. It's not just about memorizing dates in history class, but understanding how those events shaped the world we live in now.
That's exactly it. And this isn't just some kind of academic theory. ENA is being used everywhere, like education, business, psychology, even political science. People are using it to study everything from how teams work together to how information spreads online.
Wait, political science? So you could use the ENA to analyze like political debates, see how the arguments connect, or maybe even how public opinion shifts?
You got it. ENA can map those conversations, show us which points are kind of central, and even reveal how different viewpoints relate or don't relate to each other.
Okay, this is getting really interesting, but before we go too far down the rabbit hole here, can you give us a quick, like an ELI 5 on how this analysis actually works?
Sure, think of it this way. Every concept or idea is like a node in a network. And ENA looks at how often and in what ways these nodes are, mentioned together. The more two concepts are linked, the stronger their connection in the network.
So if we were analyzing a bunch of research articles on, let's say, climate change, ENA could show us which concepts are kind of at the center and how they're all connected.
Exactly. And it could even highlight those hidden connections or even those unexpected patterns that you wouldn't necessarily see just from reading the articles.
It's funny. This makes me think about how I usually read research. I often focus on the main points, but I don't always think about how those points connect to this wider network of ideas. ENA could be a total game changer for really understanding a topic.
Yeah, it's a powerful tool for seeing the bigger picture. And we're really only starting to explore all of its potential.
So it's not just about analyzing data, but uncovering new insights, maybe even predicting what might happen next.
That's one of the most exciting parts. By understanding the structure of a network, we might be able to sort of anticipate how it's going to change over time. But like any tool,
Yeah.
it's important to remember that it has limitations.
Right. It's not a crystal ball or anything, but it seems like it could give us a much deeper understanding of those complex situations. Okay, I'm officially hooked. Let's get into some more specific examples of how this is being used. So, my brain is still kind of buzzing a little bit from our last conversation about ENA. It's like, I don't know, I've unlocked some secret code for how knowledge actually works or something.
Yeah, it's definitely a powerful way to look at things. And I'm excited to dive into some more concrete examples of how it's actually being used out there.
Yeah, for sure. So you mentioned that ENA is being used to study online learning communities, and I'm really curious about that. How can it help us understand how people are learning in those digital spaces?
Well, online learning platforms are basically like these huge networks of students, right? And they're interacting with each other, with the material, with the instructors. And ENA lets us map all those interactions so we can actually see the patterns in how people are learning.
Oh, so instead of just looking at grades or, completion rates, we can actually see how students are engaging with the information and how they're connecting with it.
Exactly. ENA can help us pinpoint those pathways that students are taking as they learn. We can see who might be struggling to grasp those key concepts, or on the other hand, we can find those students who kind of emerge as leaders or maybe even mentors within the community.
That's really fascinating. It's like we can actually move beyond those traditional assessments and get a much richer picture of what's actually going on in these online environments.
And that understanding can help us to create a more personalized and effective learning experience, right? Instructors can use ENA to adapt their teaching styles, to figure out which students might need extra support, and even to foster a more collaborative and engaging virtual classroom.
I'm imagining this future where ENA is being used to actually design these online courses that are tailored to each student's individual learning style and their needs. That's pretty amazing. But you also mentioned that ENA is being used to study team dynamics in different fields, right?
Yeah, absolutely. ENA can be really valuable for understanding how teams function, especially when it comes to that knowledge sharing and collaboration piece.
Okay, so break it down for me. How does ENA actually shed light on teamwork?
Well, one of the key things it can show us is how that knowledge is actually distributed within a team.
Hmm.
Like, who are the go-to experts on certain topics? Is that expertise actually being shared in a way that's effective? Are there any communication silos that might be holding the team back?
So ENA can essentially diagnose the strengths and weaknesses of a team's knowledge network and help them work better together.
Exactly. And by looking at those communication patterns, ENA can also find those people who are kind of acting as bridges between different parts of the team. They might not be the official leaders, but they're playing this crucial role in connecting people and making sure that everyone is on the same page.
That makes a lot of sense. It actually reminds me of this project I worked on once where we had all the right people with all the expertise, but the communication was just a total mess. If we'd had ENA back then, we could have spotted those communication gaps and maybe avoided some pretty headaches.
It really is a powerful tool for optimizing team collaboration. And I think we're going to see a lot more organizations using it in the future.
This is all really exciting, but I'm also wondering about the potential downsides. I mean, ENA is essentially mapping how information and ideas flow. Could that have implications for privacy?
Yeah, that's a really important point. It's really crucial to think about those ethical considerations when you're using any technology that analyzes personal data.
So, what are some of the specific concerns?
Well, one thing is data security. We have to make sure that sensitive information, like personal communications or even proprietary knowledge, is being handled responsibly and that it's protected from unauthorized access.
Right, of course. We wouldn't want ENA turning into some tool for surveillance or corporate espionage.
Yeah, exactly. And we also have to be careful about how that data is interpreted. ENA can give us really valuable insights, but it's just one piece of the puzzle.
So you're saying that ENA shouldn't be used to make quick judgments about people or to label them unfairly based on where they are in a network?
Absolutely. It's all about using that data responsibly and ethically.
So with ENA, like with any new technology, it's about thinking carefully about how we use it, making sure it's being used for good.
Yeah. Exactly. And I think that's what makes this field so interesting. It's not just about the technical aspects, but also about those human and societal implications.
It's definitely a lot to consider. This deep dive is already making me look at information and knowledge in a totally new way. But I'm really eager to hear about what's next for ENA. Can we talk about that in part 3? Okay, so welcome back to our ENA deep dive. After that last conversation about online learning and teams, I'm like, I don't know, I'm practically boosting with all these ideas about how this technique can be used. It feels like we've just scratched the surface here.
Yeah, that's true. We've really only just begun to sort of tap into ENA's potential, and that's really what we're going to explore in this final part. We're going to look at the cutting edge of the research and kind of think about what the future might hold for this.
All right, so I'm ready to take that journey to the frontiers of knowledge. We've talked about ENA in education and in teamwork, but it seems like you could use this to understand even bigger, more complex systems, right?
You're absolutely right. Researchers are already using ENA to study things that were, really difficult to understand with our old ways of doing things. For example, ENA is making some pretty big waves in epidemiology, which is the study of how diseases spread.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Disease outbreaks are all about networks, right? How is ENA actually being used there?
Well, by mapping the connections between people in a population, ENA can help us understand how a virus might move through a community. We can figure out who those potential super spreaders might be and even try to predict how well different interventions might work.
So in this post-pandemic world that we live in, ENA could really be a game changer for public health.
Exactly. It's about understanding those network dynamics that are kind of driving disease transmission and then using that knowledge to come up with more targeted and hopefully more effective public health strategies.
It's incredible when you think about it that way. And you mentioned before that E&A is also being used to study financial markets, which I'm still trying to wrap my head around, honestly.
Yeah, well, financial markets are really just networks of buyers and sellers and all those information flows, right?
Oh.
And so E&A can be used to map these connections so we can start to see those patterns in trading behavior, maybe identify those key influencers, and potentially even anticipate things like market bubbles or crashes.
Wait, so you're saying E&A could help us understand what's driving those market trends, maybe even predict those potential risks?
Well, it's not about making those, perfect predictions or anything like that, but it's about getting a better understanding of the forces that are at work. By looking at those connections and relationships within the market, E&A can provide us with those valuable insights into how things actually work.
That's pretty mind-blowing when you think about it. It seems like E&A could really help us understand all kinds of complex systems. Where do you see this technology going in the future?
It's hard to say for sure, but I think we're going to see E&A being used in even more um, creative and innovative ways. One area that I'm really excited about is its potential to connect different disciplines.
So what do you mean by connecting different disciplines?
Well, E&A kind of gives us this common language and framework for understanding those complex systems, regardless of what specific field you're in. So researchers from different areas like sociology, computer science, even neuroscience, they could all use E&A to study different aspects of the same thing.
So E&A could actually help people from different fields work together better and come up with a more holistic understanding of those really complex issues. That's a pretty compelling vision.
I think so too.
Hmm.
By breaking down those traditional silos between disciplines, E&A has the potential to lead to some really groundbreaking discoveries. And who knows, maybe it could even lead to some new solutions for some of the biggest challenges that we're facing as a society.
This whole deep dive has been a really amazing journey. We've gone from those basics of E&A all the way to exploring how it could, really reshape the way we understand the world.
Yeah, it really shows the power of ideas, right?
Yeah.
And how important it is to keep searching for those new ways of understanding this increasingly complex world that we live in.
Absolutely. And as we wrap up here, I have one last question for you and for our listeners. If E&A is like having X-ray vision for knowledge, what hidden connections are waiting to be discovered
Yeah.
in your own life, your work,
Yeah.
or even in those big challenges that our society is facing right now?
That's a really great question, and something to think about. Just remember, the connections that we make, both in our own minds and in our communities, can have a really profound impact on the world around us.
That's a great point to end on. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the fascinating world of epistemic network analysis. We'll be back soon with another thought-provoking topic. Until then, keep exploring those connections.